Welcome to Farm Charm Chic. I'm Emily. In today's episode, I have put together some of my favorite fall shelf sitters. These are so farmhouse, so easy. You're going to love each and every one of these. If you like crafting, DIYs, dupes, hacks, thrift flips, or just creating in general, I would love if you would consider subscribing. If you do like any of today's projects, remember to hit that thumbs up. But let's go make some DIYs. This is another one of those projects that's really fun to do with your leftover fall floral scraps that you might have. This is just a little votive from Dollar Tree. It's from a number of years ago. My daughter was cleaning out her room and she was kind of done with some of her little trinkets and things, and this was one of the pieces she gave to me and was like, "Mom, can you do anything with this?" And I thought, I'm going to turn this into a pumpkin. So you'll have to let me know if it actually looks like a pumpkin in the end. But I did just paint it with some pumpkin Waverly chalk paint to get that nice orange color there. And then I'm just going to glue some styrofoam in there so we can get to putting our little bits of florals in there. Now I'm just going to put a good layer of the Spanish moss on the top here just with some hot glue. Whenever you're doing this with Spanish moss and hot glue, just know that that hot glue can seep through there and burn your fingers really easily. So wear finger protectors or just be very aware of that when you're doing that. I just am speaking from experience of burning myself more than once, many times actually, when I'm doing this process. So just be careful. Now I just have some different little scraps here. You can see off to the side there, I had originally had those flowers. I thought maybe I would use some of those, but I ended up just taking a couple little sprigs off of there. I have a lot of florals that I've just picked up at Dollar Tree or the craft store over the years that I'll just take a little piece here or a piece there, and even when I'm done with them and have some extra little pieces, I just keep them in a bag with my fall crafting stuff. So that way, because you're always just looking for a little bit of this or a little bit of that, and it's fun to have a project that you can kind of pull those out and use those for. So you can kind of see here, I'm going for a little bit of an asymmetrical look. Now this is a little stick from our farm. I gathered a bunch of sticks last fall that I ended up using for some fall and Christmas projects. So it's always fun to have those on hand. But that's my pumpkin stem, so you'll have to just keep that in mind as we're going on here. And I just kind of was anything orange or red or yellow, kind of adding that in. And I had this little succulents that was from Dollar Tree from another project that I had, and so I just kind of stole it from that and stuck it in the side there. And then I'm just gluing a little bit of reindeer moss, just little scraps that I have just to kind of bring a little bit more greenery into that Spanish moss. But I think this looks really cute. I don't know if it necessarily looks like a pumpkin, but I'm going to go with it. It looks fall, regardless of whether it looks like a pumpkin or not. But I just think this would be so cute on a tiered tray or a shelf, just to have a project to do something with all of those little bits of florals that you might have, or a votive that maybe you're done with. It was just kind of a fun project to repurpose this, and I think it turned out really cute. What do you guys think? I love picking up these different blocks at Dollar Tree. They come out every season with a few different designs of these, and I'll pick them up 2 or 3 at a time and have them for different projects. Now this is just a piece that I had used prior just in my stash, and it's about 5 inches. The measurement really doesn't matter too much. You just do what's going to fit your pieces that you're using, and I'll show you kind of what I mean in a moment here. Now the paint that I'm using is just some chalk paint, and I'm doing a very messy coat on here. I did just use some water, like a spray bottle of water, and a putty knife to scrape off the original design from Dollar Tree. So that's how you would get that off. Now I'm just taking some scrapbook paper here. This one came from Hobby Lobby, I believe last year or the year before. They have very similar designs from year to year, so just get what matches your decor. And I traced out that little rectangle shape there, and then I will just cut outside of my line there. So I want this to be just slightly bigger than my surface because I want to clean it up, and I'll show you that here in a moment. To get this paper adhered to my surface, I'm just using my trusty purple Elmer School Glue. You guys, I love this stuff, and if you like using it in your craft projects, I'm going to tell you a little secret. This time of year and fall time at back to school, the back to school stuff will start to go on clearance as the kids go back to school. And I swear they always have, at least at my Walmarts, they always have a ton of this glue, and they mark it down super cheap, like 25 cents for one of those big things that's normally like $2.50 or something. So watch for that because it's a great deal. I buy it in bulk and I totally stock up on it this time of year when it's back to school. Now I'm taking my brayer and I'm just going to roll this on here, and that's going to get out any air bubbles. It's going to make sure that you get a good bond between your paper and your surface. Now the paper where it's slightly bigger, you're going to have a little bit of it hanging over the edge, and that's exactly what we want, because we'll take a fingernail file and I'm just going to file slowly in a downward motion on this paper here against the surface, and you can see that edge coming off. So it's going to make that edge look completely like it was made to go on this surface. So it's going to make them look as one, not that it was paper glued to your surface. Now I decided to take this a step further, and I am sanding a little bit more into the paper and the block, just because I wanted a little bit more of a rounded edge to it, so in the rounded corner, so it did look a little more rustic. That's definitely my style. It just depends on if that's something you want to do or not. If you don't want to take this step, by all means don't. Now you can see that there's a little bit of the whiteness to the paper there from it being sanded. So I'm just taking a little bit of antiquing wax, just any antiquing wax, water-based will work, and I'm using a baby wipe, but a wet paper towel would also work. And I'm just going to go around this edge, and it's just going to tone that down so you don't see the white. I decided to kind of go over the paper there and then the rest of the block with the little bit of antiquing wax also, just to tone that white down just a little bit. That's something that wouldn't be necessary, but once I started doing it, I really did like the way that it looked. So this has been sitting in my stash for a couple of years. It's just a pumpkin like pick for your planters boxes, like on your porch or something. You could easily use these from Dollar Tree. You could use something from a sign like this right here. I've also seen different picks at Walmart that you could grab to use. You just need a pumpkin shape that's a little bit smaller than your surface. So I just took the backing or that stick off of my pumpkin, and then I'm sitting here with some Spanish moss trying to decide whether or not to put this on. It's a very nice clean look without it. However, I do end up liking the texture that this Spanish moss adds. Plus it gives you a good surface to glue your pumpkin to. It really is a matter of if you like it or if you don't. I did end up liking it just because I love to add different texture to different projects. I felt it almost added a little bit of a French country touch to this, and so I definitely loved it. So I'm just using some hot glue to glue that down, and we're talking just the littlest bit of Spanish moss. Don't overdo it and have it look like a bird's nest or anything, or have it be too shaggy. You want it so it's not going to get all over your house or anything like that. But just be careful when you're gluing it down, because the glue does seep through there, and every time I do this, I swear I end up going, ouch, that's hot. I forget. So just remember that. Then I just used some hot glue to glue this pumpkin on top of that Spanish moss, and look at how beautiful this turns out. This turns out so simple, and I just think it will be the perfect little piece to sit on a shelf or to tuck in your home decor for fall. If you even wanted to take it a step further and put some words on it over the paper there, or paint it a solid color, put something on it. I just love the simplicity of this paper though. I'm very anxious to know what you guys think of this project. Do you guys like it? A few videos back, I did a thrift flipping with my family video, and while my family was picking out some DIYs, I found these two beautiful bunt pans, and I knew I wanted to grab them to make some pumpkins out of. So I've been holding on to them for a couple of months. Now this little copper one right here, it does have a little hanger on it like it was made for wall decor, so I don't think it was ever used to cook anything in, but this bunt pan is heavy duty, it's beautiful, but I just loved the color. And if you saw the price on there, I only paid $1 for it. So both of these I paid $1 for. Great bargain, great deal, and they're going to make some beautiful pumpkins. To start with, I'm just taking some floral foam. You could use some styrofoam, just something to fill in the gap in the middle of this bunt pan so we can fill it with a stem and some florals to kind of bring in that nice fall feel. I've seen a lot of these through Pinterest and my Instagram feed that people have done, and there's so many different ways to make these look like pumpkins. So I'm just kind of taking my spin on it today. I hope you guys enjoy this one. This is just a finial that I had. It's from Hobby Lobby, but any type of finial or even just a stick from your yard that you could cut down to make it look like the stem of a pumpkin would work great. So no need to get too fancy with that. I just painted mine green, and now I'm just putting a little bit of hot glue down on this floral foam, and I'm just putting some Spanish moss here. This is just going to help fill in all of the gaps here, give my florals something else to stick to besides that floral foam. And it's also just going to bring home that nice fall color. I love using Spanish moss in my fall DIYs. Now, first of all, I'm just going to dry fit. I just grabbed a bunch of my fall foliage, like fall florals rather, that I have here, and leaving some little succulents there. And I just brought them all out. And I'm just playing around just until I can kind of see if I like the way something looks or I don't. And this way, before I glue everything in place to be more of a permanent hold, I know if I like it. Now, one thing you could do is if this is a pan that you're not wanting to use any hot glue on or anything, you could skip the step of the hot glue and just dry fit everything in here and use your pan. Even if you did use a little bit of hot glue, you can still get that off of the pan. But this way, if you're not wanting to totally ruin a pan, you're just wanting it for decorational purposes, but then have it be functional, that's one thing to remember as well. So you could just totally dry fit all of your florals here and just leave it. I do end up gluing mine just so I could show you the process that I go through. Now with my leaves right here, this is a wonderful tip if you get some silk flowers or leaves that are very crumpled, especially from Dollar Tree. You guys know how some of those picks can look. Just blast them flat on a table with your little heat tool that blows the hot air there. That's just going to help flatten those out, and you can see how they went from very wrinkly to very flat. It's a great hack, and it works wonderful this time of year because I feel like all of the fall leaves that come into Dollar Tree especially look so crumpled and gross, and you just are tempted to not buy them. But never fear, this trick works wonders. I love using a little bit of pitberry here. You can see off to the right, that was just kind of a pick that I got at Hobby Lobby that had all of these little orange pitberries there that you can kind of make look like little corkscrews, like the little pumpkin vines or tendrils that come off of those pumpkins. And so I love using those. Now my stem was a little too green for the vibe that I was wanting to go for, so I'm just covering it with some antiquing wax. Once I get this completely covered, I'll take just a baby wipe or a wet paper towel and kind of just wipe, just wipe the excess off. And it's just going to leave you with a nice aged look there, more antique. You can kind of see how that will stay in all of the grooves on this little piece of this finial here. And I really do like the aged look that brings, and it kind of was more the vibe I was going for. Now that I've set everything in, I've dry fitted it to where I want it, I'm going to kind of take it out the best I can, almost like a clock. That's how it made sense in my mind anyway. I'm just taking all of these pieces out, placing them kind of where I had them set in my foam, and that way when I go back in to glue everything, I have it kind of in the area that I want it. It doesn't look exactly the same, but I'm very pleased with how it turns out. I'm using a lot of hot glue to make sure that this stem doesn't go anywhere. It's not strong enough that you're going to want to pick this up by the stem by any means, but I definitely want that stem staying in place, not getting knocked over or anything like that. And the glue is going directly onto the foam. It's not going anywhere on my Bunt pan. Now I just kind of work in the same order, going with a little bit of hot glue on the ends. I think if I had one of those crocks that you're able to kind of dip your stem in with the hot glue. I've never had one of those, but this was one of those projects that I thought that might be worth having. If you have one of those with the little hot glue beads that you put in, this would be a perfect project to pull that out for and do this with. But you could also use any kind of glue that you like to use, crafting glue. Hot glue is just what my go-to, and so that's what I was using here, just a little bit on the stems, and then I go around and just stick each of them in, trying to get them as close to where I had them before, but just whatever feels good, because once they're glued in, you can still kind of have a little bit of wiggle room to manipulate them how you want, but they're gonna be pretty secure once you glue them in. When I found this Bunt pan, I was so excited with the color because it was already this beautiful harvest gold fall color. and I thought it would be so fun to do this with the pumpkin, but then this copper one I thought matched so well with it, so I thought they would be really cute together. I wanted to go for a more neutral look with this copper one, so this is just a peg from like a shaker shelf, and I'm just staining it with a little bit of antiquing wax to kind of make it look a little more aged. And then just a little bit of hot glue. It fit perfectly down, and there was this little indentation there, and it fit perfectly in there. And we're going to glue some stuff around it. I did not put any Spanish moss on this because I didn't really feel like it needed it. But with whatever florals you're deciding to do, some Spanish moss is a great filler to use. I just had these little, this was a package of the little cotton pods from Dollar Tree. There was 4 of them in there. I end up using 3. And then in between each of the cotton pieces here, you can see this is just a little bit of scrap leaf off of just one of those picks that I have off to the side there. I'll blast it with my heat tool to flatten it out, and you can see how flat that makes it. And then I just put a little bit of glue, and I'm going to just tuck one of these little leaves in between each of the cotton pieces of cotton. Are they cotton pods? Is that? Somebody told me in one of my videos what they were called, and now I cannot remember for the life of me. But I'm just going to stick some of those leaves in between all of those little pieces of cotton. Where this particular pan did not have a hole or recessed area, I wasn't too worried about actually gluing my piece directly, like the little florals, directly onto the pan, since I don't really feel like this particular pot or pan was worth anything. The Bunt pan might have a little bit of historical value. I just wanted to kind of be as careful as I could not to have the glue touch that one. This one I feel is just more strictly decorational anyway. And so I didn't have a problem gluing things directly to it. Now these are just some pip berries on this. I thought it was fun to kind of bring that harvest color of pip berry in on this particular one to tie it in to our harvest gold Bunt pan that I've used. So I just thought it was kind of a fun way to bring the fall colors, but you could stay completely neutral, do some white pip berry, or skip this step altogether. I love wrapping it around like a pencil or a paintbrush as I'm doing here to give it that nice corkscrew look. I just really do think that kind of ties in the pumpkin vines and how they get all of those little corkscrews and curlicues everywhere. I thought that was a really fun touch. I think these turn out so pretty. How fun are these going to be to have for kitchen decor for fall? And where these are such like a neutral fall, you can put them up at the beginning of the season and leave them all throughout Thanksgiving or however long you leave your fall decor up. I think they're beautiful. I love this trend. You can search Grandma's cabinet. Maybe you've even got a really fun Bunt pan. Check your thrift stores. Even if you don't find them in this color that I did, I've seen them done with all different colors, and I think they all turn out beautifully. What do you guys think of these? As I was searching for French country ideas, I saw a lot of terracotta pots that kind of had like a very aged look or like a plaster finish to them. So I thought I would try that with this pot that I have, and you can use any type of terracotta pot that you might have. I'm just putting some baking soda in this little dish, and I'm just adding some chalk paint to it. You probably could use like spackle really easy to do this same texture, maybe water it down a little bit because I felt like it was almost the same type of consistency texture as I was mixing this. And mix it really good before you add more paint, because I've had seen a lot of people do this that say that you'll keep adding paint thinking it's dry and then you end up with it too liquidy. So just kind of mix it really good before you decide to add more paint, because I thought I was going to have to add so much more, and I ended up not. Now I'm just going to brush this on to the pot here. And this is what I decided to do first, was kind of brush it on like this. But as you'll see in a minute, I found another method that works a little bit better. But I mean, this works fine too, and you can do it as heavy or as light as you want. I end up taking a stencil brush from Dollar Tree, and I'll dip it in my baking soda mixture there, and then I will just kind of push up and down. And I'm doing it pretty heavily because I want that heavy texture to it. And then I just want some of the terracotta to show, and I could have left more. It just kind of is a matter of personal preference. This was the first time I tried this particular technique, and so like I said, I think I got a little heavy, but I do like how it turns out, and it was kind of fun to do too. So now I just have a couple of pumpkins. I used this pumpkin in a lot of my displays last year. And then I bought this one at Hobby Lobby. I think Dollar Tree has them too. It ended up being like $1. And then I'm just going to make a little topiary out of these. So I'm just taking some styrofoam here and I'm just using my putty knife to cut off the edges. And then I will just kind of squish or push that styrofoam down into my little terracotta pot here. This particular pumpkin did come from Hobby Lobby. I have seen them there this year. Like I said, I used it in a few displays last year and I thought it would be perfect for this, but I loved the greenery that it had. So if you're using one that you have on hand or you're using one from Dollar Tree, you might want to add some greenery around the bottom because that really does soften it. So I stick it in that styrofoam and then I'm just using a wooden dowel. And I'm just using that to get the pumpkins through. Now, this particular one, I turned upside down to kind of push it through first because I just wanted to have control of where the hole was going. And it has like that, around the styrofoam of the pumpkin is like, I don't even know what it is, like a film or something. So I just wanted to puncture that with some control. So that's why I did it that way. So now I just want to go in between each of these layers of the pumpkin and add some embellishing. So along the bottom, I'm just using some Spanish moss and I'm just sparingly putting this in. So I'll just kind of look where it seems a little bit bare. I'll add a little glue and then I just kind of will push that moss in. And then I have these little picks of hydrangeas and I thought this golden color looked so beautiful. I kind of love the muted tones that this ends up having. So you could totally go with what your personality is on this and do it as colorful as you want, as muted as you want. You wouldn't even have to use the flowers. You could just do greenery. I thought like if you like that look of like the feathers that you see in some of the fall arrangements, that would look really cute kind of between the layers. The possibilities are endless. And this is the fun part of creating, is getting to do what matches your taste and your style. So I'm starting this next layer, putting the Spanish moss all the way around because I wanted that to kind of come out between the different layers. And then I take some boxwood. This is from Walmart, the boxwood pick. And it's $1.97 for a pick, and it's an amazing deal because you can do so many different projects with each one. It comes with a bunch on one pick. So I'll just pull off like 6 or 7 of the little teeny pieces of the pick, little sprigs, I guess we'll call them. And I just glue those around and then intermittently just kind of put in some of those hydrangeas. And I'm just using hot glue between all of the different layers here. And then as I get around, I'll push that top layer of the pumpkin down. I can put a little extra glue there, but there was a lot of glue there to kind of hold it. So moving on to this last layer here, again, you can just see I put the Spanish moss on top. I'm just using these little silicone spatulas so I don't burn my fingers because if you've worked with Spanish moss and hot glue before, you know it seeps through very easily. And I'll just place that top pumpkin there to kind of see how much I want to do or how it looks. And then you can see on this layer, I'm just gluing these little sprigs across like this and just kind of doing, instead of doing a number 4 around the pumpkin, I just do a number 3. And I do the same thing with those hydrangeas. And then this one, I do put a little bit of glue there to hold that top pumpkin down. And then I just push that down and hold it. Now I did go back and add some boxwood to the bottom layer so it looked cohesive on all of the different layers. And then just kind of spun it around to make sure that everything looked how I wanted it. If I needed to trim any of the Spanish moss or anything like that. But I'm loving this. I think this turns out absolutely beautiful. Some of the ones I saw online that were close to this size were upwards of $80. And some of this was just from pumpkins I had on hand. But I just think this is beautiful and I love how this turns out. I have this sugar mold that I purchased on Amazon a number of years back, and I love changing it out for different seasons. It has these 3 holes in it. A lot of times you find them with candles in them, and once you burn the candles, you're wondering what you're left to do with it, or you just want to start with a blank slate. I just love changing it up for all sorts of different seasons. So I thought I would take it for this fall season, and I'm going to update it to kind of just be something fresh and new for this fall. So the first thing I'm doing is I'm getting any glue residue or anything that's on there off. Now this is a reproduction sugar mold. So this is one that has been made recently in the last few years. It's not an antique. If you have an antique one, you do just want to be careful if you're doing anything on the surface, such as glue or anything like that, just be careful removing it. But as you can see, I just use my heat tool to help get anything off of there. If I happen to like scratch any of that like stain that's on there off, I'll just use a little bit of antiquing wax to help get that back to its color there. So you can see I just have some styrofoam down in each of the little molds there. And I keep that in there. I just kind of take out my florals with every season. You can add things to it like that if you would like to. The styrofoam, some Spanish moss in there would work great as well. So I just have these florals. I picked these up at Hobby Lobby this year. I just thought those little teeny sunflowers were so pretty and delicate and perfect for fall. Kind of a good transition harvest piece. I do kind of change it out a little bit for Halloween. And so I just wanted something that could kind of just bring in that essence of fall since it's still a little bit early right now. But I just really wanted those colors. But I mean, I still have flowers blooming in my front yard. So I thought it would just be fun to kind of, you know, incorporate those fall feels, but yet still kind of have a little touch of summer there with those sunflowers. Now, as you can see, I just kind of do what feels good. There's not really a rhyme or reason to this. I have this little pitberry that I'm just going to corkscrew around just a paintbrush or a pencil here. I like to just kind of stick that in, have that sticking out for a little whimsical touch. If you do want to sell these and you're wanting to put your florals in, I would recommend using a little bit of glue to glue these in with. That way it'll stay a little bit more permanently. However, if you're really wanting the people to be able to change these out, go light on the glue so they can change them out. I've had a few people ask me that in the past if they were to sell them, what I would recommend. But part of the fun is to be able to change these out for different seasons, change them up a little bit different. Now I had that corn cob that I put in there from Dollar Tree, and you can kind of see down on my table I had a crow I was going to put in there, and I end up not loving that, so I left him off. But I just have these little pumpkins that came on a Dollar Tree pick that I just took those off. I have a couple of little corn cobs that look like the little harvest corn there that came on a Dollar Tree pick. I just kind of look for bits and pieces to kind of stick in here and just kind of go with what I'm feeling. I've had a lot of fun coming up with some different themes to do with this sugar mold. Now this is one of those little pumpkins. I think it was either like on a little toothpick or it might have been like on the back of a little truck, but the orange was so bright that I just thought I would tone it down with a little bit of white paint. And then I even get out a little bit of my pumpkin orange from Waverly, and I'll kind of go over it a little bit with that to kind of bring in the little more muted orange tones that this piece has. I love to keep the barbecue skewers on hand from Dollar Tree for projects like this because you can just snip those down and use that to place these little pumpkins in there. It worked perfectly. Now you can see my little corn cobs here. I had one or two in there and I found another one in my stash. So I thought it would be fun to have 3 of them and have them kind of, I had the 2 yellow and the 1 reddish orange. And so I just kind of stuck those in there. Now this ribbon came from Dollar Tree as well. And since the sugar mold tapers down, it's not an exact rectangle. In the back, it does have to kind of go at an angle like this to have it sit flat. Now, in some of my other videos on my sugar molds, I've showed some ways to kind of get around that. But for the most part, where this sits in my home, it's up against a wall. It's not, you're not going to see the back of it. So you just need to keep that in mind. There's lots of different ways around that with working with that angle. But on this one, I just wanted it really taut in the front. So I just pulled it completely taut and then had it kind of at that angle in the back. Now this is just a tag. I found this in my stash. I don't recall if it came from Dollar Tree or Hobby Lobby, but there was a couple of them. So I'm just gluing this onto the ribbon rather than the wood itself. And that way it's going to have less glue residue for me to remove when I change this out for Halloween. But I'm just kind of ruffling or wrinkling this tag. I wanted it to look kind of like it had some wrinkles in there, like it had been kind of stuck over time.
I just thought that looks kind of fun, but if that's not your jam, then you would just skip that. I just had this twine bow. It felt like it needed a little something, a button or a little tassel would have been really cute as well. But I just think this turns out so stunning. I love the corn and the sunflowers together with just a little touch of pumpkins, not overly pumpkin. This is going to be so beautiful in my home. Again, if you do this and decorate it from both sides, it would make a beautiful centerpiece, something maybe on a kitchen island. A mantle is where it would be perfect. Unfortunately, I don't have a mantle in my home, but where it sits is kind of against the wall like a mantle would be. But what do you guys think of this? Do you want me to keep showing you different ways I decorate this sugar mold?
I am so excited with how this DIY turns out, and it's kind of questionable through the process. It was one of those I had to trust the process, and the end product is beautiful. So stay with me on this. This is just using some of the styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree and a little bit of spackling, and I added a little bit of water to my spackling so it was a little bit more the consistency of like cake frosting. But you're going to have some texture in there with some little pieces of the spackling that kind of makes it look like the warty pumpkins that you've seen. So that's totally fine if your spackling is not smooth. In fact, you don't want it smooth. You want it to have more of that texture. But I'm just kind of spreading it over the pumpkin like frosting. I end up putting on some gloves because it does get a little messy. And I'm just covering all of the areas, trying to make sure that I don't need full coverage here to cover the orange. I just need coverage where it matches texture. So if I miss like a spot on the styrofoam, you're going to notice. So I just want to make sure that all of the styrofoam has a little bit of the spackling over it so the texture matches. You can kind of just see how I'm going all over like this. Is definitely messy, so just be aware of that. Now this pumpkin right here, this is completely dried, 24 hours, the spackling. I even took it outside and set it on my trampoline so I could make sure that the sun kind of really dried it well. And I'm covering it completely with some elephant chalk paint. I want this to kind of have almost like a concrete look. Now this particular one right here is another one that I had done, and I'm also painting it. So I've done two separate styrofoam pumpkins, same process, and I am painting my second one now with the same elephant chalk paint. So I'm just showing you here that I have two different ones, and I'm going to kind of do a little bit of a different technique on both of them. Either way, you just want to make sure that your spackling has completely dried, and then also let your paint dry before you move on to the next step. So on this one, I'm taking some more plaster and I'm going to spread this over my pumpkin. I know that I wanted a two-tone look with the white and the gray, and so I wanted to test out two different methods here, and I honestly don't have a preference over which one I like the best. I will say that this one has a more sturdy feel once it's done, but not enough that you would notice between the two and think that it was better than the other. So whichever method you feel like you would like to try, follow that, because they both turn out beautifully, but just slightly different. So I'm just covering this. I just wanted to be able to see a little bit of that gray peeking through. Again, kind of like a concrete feel. Now on this next one, I decided instead of doing another layer of the plaster, I wanted to just do paint and see if it works the same, because I thought, well, maybe this would be a little bit easier, and this method is a little bit easier, less messy. So it just kind of, again, depends on which one you think suits your type of DIY that you want to try. So I'm just going over with white paint. This would be fun to try with some different colors, I think. But honestly, at this point, I'm going, these just look, I just was not sure about how this was going. But I always say trust the process, and I did. And oh my gosh, I just love these. Especially if you're a crafter who likes to sell things for different boutiques or craft fairs, shows that you do. You could definitely do these. You'll have to do like kind of batch them and do the spackling on a bunch, let that dry for a day, and then move on to the next step. So it is something that'll take you a little bit of time, but you could easily do several of these, and I think that you could have a really good return for how much you've paid to make these. I think you could charge a very decent amount for these. So now I'm just moving on to the next step here, just touching up any area that I want to make sure that there's paint on. I will say, that if you don't let these completely dry and you're painting them like this, what will happen is it will start to peel back. So if you notice that, just stop, let it dry some more, and then move on to the next step. I was even using my heat tool. You can kind of see at the bottom where some of that was lifting up because the bottom where it had set down hadn't dried completely. Really easy to fix though. Again, I just dried it and then just covered it with paint, and you cannot even tell. The fun part about these pumpkins is the texture that you're creating, and you really want to define that texture almost like it's like this modern organic feel to these pumpkins. And so I just really wanted that warty texture we've created to really pop. So I felt like there was a little too much white. So I'm just taking my elephant chalk paint brush that has just a little bit. So I'm almost like dry brushing over the top of these. And that texture is so thick and so rich, it just picks up all of that little bit that's left in the brush and really defines that. Now on the flip side of that, if you feel like you have too much white, you can go back in, too much gray, you can go back in with your white brush and do the same technique. In fact, you can go back and forth until you get your desired look. Just make sure you let it dry in between each time, so that way you're not smearing the paint. You're getting that true definition between the two. I just absolutely love how this texture looks. You can see here between the two how that gray pops on that one on the right. So I just decided to do the same thing with this other one and make sure that all of that texture pops with the gray on this one. So I just do that same thing, dry brushing over this one. After you've got your desired texture on there and the colors and everything and it's completely dry, I'm going to go in here, and this is where you can have so much fun making this look like a pumpkin and adding whatever details you would like. I really wanted to go for a very neutral feel with these. So these are just a couple of sticks from my yard or my farm that I have that I love to use for pumpkin stems this time of year. And since these are those styrofoam pumpkins from Dollar Tree, you can just push those in. They will go right into the top, and then a little bit of hot glue holds them in place. And then I'm just going to put a little bit of Spanish moss over the top. That's just going to add a little bit of softness and texture. And you guys know that I love to use Spanish moss in fall DIYs, especially with pumpkins, because I feel like it does look like it just goes. It feels like it's the curly, cute little vines that you get with your pumpkins. It's a good color for fall, and especially where I'm trying to stick with the neutral tones here, it's really good. So you can see with this one here, I'm just a little bit of glue. I kind of put my little stick askew so it's not quite straight up. It's kind of off to the side. You can have so much fun doing all of these details with these pumpkins here. And then I'm just going to place the Spanish moss here and kind of push that stem where I want it situated off to the side there, and just kind of let that dry. I'm taking a little bit of barn wire. This is just fencing wire. You can use whatever kind of wire that you would like, or you can even skip using the wire and do, as you'll see me in a moment, use a little bit of pitberry on them or something. I just felt like this wire really kind of brought that modern farmhouse touch into it. Looks like the little tendril curlicue vines that you get on the pumpkins naturally, and it just adds another element into it. And all I do is I just kind of bend it almost into like a U shape with the both ends of the wire. I'm just sticking that into the styrofoam, going around my stem a little bit and sticking the other end right down into the styrofoam. And so that way you're not having any sharp edges exposed or anything like that. You can touch those with some glue if you want to have them stay a little bit more permanent on there. But honestly, if you stick them down in far enough, they're not going to be coming out unless you were to like pull on them. Now on this second one over here, this is where I started to do some of the pitberry. I have some white. If you wanted to bring a color in, you could, but I just really, again, wanted these to be very neutral looking. And so I'm just going to curl these around just a little paintbrush here to get the curlicue vines on those. I'll snip it off there. And then I do the exact same thing. I just stick that wire, since these are on a wire, down into the styrofoam and just kind of curl that around the stem, and I'll stick the other end back down into that styrofoam. I just love how these are looking. You'll have to let me know what you think of these. These were so fun to create, and I really just wanted just a fun, something a little bit different. I don't know. I'm so excited to put these in my decor. I just think they're so fun. In fact, I liked the pitberry on the one so much, I decided to kind of do another little bit to put on the other one because I really thought they looked cute with that. And then in that same vein, I take a little bit of the fencing wire that I have and put a little bit of that onto the other pumpkin, so that way they're almost identical in the way that I did each of them. So if you're batch doing these, you're wanting to sell these, make it as easy as possible, make them all look the same, or you could even do a little bit different, something to speak to different buyers, different colors. But I just really think these turn out so cute. I am so pleased with how these turned out. They are exactly what I wanted them to be. You would never know that these were the Dollar Tree styrofoam pumpkins underneath here. Just look at that beautiful texture that you get on these, and just think of all the different possibilities you could do with different tones or colors that you wanted to play around with. I just think this is just such a fun, different way, different treatment to do for these pumpkins, and I just think they turn out beautiful. Very classy and high-end, in my opinion. I just think they're going to be so fun to have in my fall decor. I would love to know what you guys think of these. I would like to thank you so much for joining me for today's compilation video. I hope that you enjoyed all of these DIYs. If you had a favorite, let me know down in the comments. I always love to hear which ones you guys like the best. Thank you so much for watching today. I'll see you next time. Happy crafting! If you liked the video that you just saw and you want to keep crafting together, here's another video that you might enjoy. And as always, remember to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I'll see you next time.